The following broadcast is intended for mature audiences. These are real people sharing very real, deeply personal experiences. This content may be considered triggering for others and for those who are sharing. The chat room is a privilege intended for discussions and sharing. You are not being asked to agree, but you are being asked to stay civil and refrain from personal attacks. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, welcome back to Am I Mental, a live weekly podcast where real people share stories about living lives with issues with mental health and things that impact mental health. I'm your host, E. With us, as usual, is co-host Bexy.
Good evening, everyone.
C is out on a personal day. That's all right. We wish him the best. They may pop back in. Who knows? I know that Bexy's always one that always pops back in. So
I just can't stay away.
Well, we wouldn't want you to anyway. All right, so let's see here. I got a message saying that our website might actually be down. Nope, it's still up. Okay, our website will be going down soon because we haven't been able to pay it. Yeah, so if you want to help us out, amimental.net/donate. There's a lot of ways you can help out, including we have a Teespring store, so you can buy some products. I had a face mask that I was wearing today. Advertising, we have t-shirts, tote bags, all sorts of good stuff. But on top of that, if you really want to help us out, share our episodes, especially ones that you think will resonate with other people. Like if someone's going through a hard time and you're like, hey, you know what? They actually talked about that on the podcast. Go ahead and send them the episode. Worst thing that could happen is they don't listen to it. That out of the way, we have our guest tonight, Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
So why don't you
Welcome.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay, so my name is Sarah, and I am a sexual abuse survivor, and my former husband also abused several of our children. So I'm here to talk about how that's impacted our lives and how we've moved forward from that.
And of course, that just pisses me off. I'm sorry. Even though we've known each other for a while and we've talked about this before, every time it comes up, it still pisses me off.
You know what? I think that is a completely normal reaction. There are few crimes that are committed that are committed on that level, and it's something that just you can. I don't want to say that it's a difficult, intimate relationships.
Yeah.
So, now I do want to add a disclaimer before we get into this that our system, our case has resolved through the legal system and Child and Family Services. So we haven't had anything open for several years, but if anybody was concerned about that, our case is resolved.
Which, of course, is a good thing.
Yeah.
Bring some stability back to your life.
Well, and it gets into, then it's gone through all the proper channels and everything has been adequately addressed. Because one of the problems you get into with issues of sexual abuse is making sure they're properly dealt with and they just don't become, we generally avoid Uncle so-and-so at Thanksgiving because he's a creep,
Right. So, just so the listeners have an idea of how things resolved, how long is your former husband in prison for?
Well, he signed a confession, and so it wasn't a matter of guilt or innocence. He was sentenced to serve a 50 to life term. However, our state offers an old age parole option after he has served 25 years if he has the proper support when he gets out, which I don't anticipate.
Right, and that would be putting him, in his 60s?
Yes, which given his health status, unrelated to incarceration, is unlikely, but I've learned to say stranger things can happen.
Got it. Yeah, our state's kind of weird like that. But
the reason they do it is actually, if you think about it, most of the time, if you've served 25 years, you're either have reached the point where you're somewhat rehabilitated and educated, like they'll actually educate you where you're in prison or not. It's a huge thing cost-wise to incarcerate people.
Right.
It's a huge thing even more to incarcerate elderly people. So, so the idea is if you've served a certain amount of time, who knows? And the laws may change in the next 25 years, but he's at least 25. In reality, he won't be breathing free air again.
And then if and when he does, there's also still the possibility that he may have to wear an ankle monitor too. Who knows?
Well, I just don't know. That's
25 years down the road.
That's I have that really in the category of that's not my problem.
That's probably a healthy place to be. So, why don't we start back at the beginning here?
Okay, so I have more than a few children. The first two children are not biologically my husband's, or my former husband. He adopted them. And then we had other biological children. He knew when I met him that I had been abused by my father, and I was very insistent that the cycle end with me. I wanted nothing more than my children to have what I didn't have. I wanted them to grow up with a mom and a dad and family holidays. And, you always want that for your kids.
Right.
And so he knew that. And so I told him.
Security, safety.
Yes, I told him I didn't, lie, cheat, or abuse or tolerate those that do. And he should have known that I was very serious about that. because the biological father of my second child ended up getting into serious drug addiction, and that ended our relationship. So it's not like that should have been really clear.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, to be fair, once he was incarcerated, I went back to college. And one of the things I've studied extensively is I'm getting a degree in psychology. So some of my psychological analysis is based on retrospect and knowledge I have gained through higher education, not what I picked up on at the time. Also of interest, just to show how clever he was at it. My mom has lived with us the entire time we were married. She's a nurse. She's a mandated reporter. That was one of the things that CFS was very interested in. So it wasn't obvious, is what I'm getting at. So when trying to think, in retrospect, he went to college at a prestigious university. Let's see, about a little more than 15 years ago. And at the time we had kids, and that's really, so I have my timeline with him in 3 aspects. There's the person I knew before he went to college. There's the person he was in college, and there's the person he was after college. There are some things I don't know. For example, one of the things they all wanted to know in the investigation was he abused? That I don't know. I did not ask him once he was incarcerated because we made a very clear split at that point. I know he was pathologically afraid of certain kinds of people, much more than anything I can explain. So maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. Of relevance to
usually a fear that gets to that level is usually not a good sign in my experience.
Yeah,
but
basically,
again, not knowing for sure.
So, now I need to make a disclaimer before I state this, and it's that I have no issue with people that are homosexuals. I have very good friends that are homosexuals, but he worked in a field with that has a high ratio of homosexual men, and he was afraid of them. And it was always so that that has led people to wonder if he had been abused by a man. I just don't know. That's one of the things that I don't know. What I do know is when our eldest son was very small, I became aware that he struggled with pornography. Now, I understand that pornography is not a problem for everyone. In our religion, it absolutely is. And he had sort of an addictive behavior, and it was a real issue for our marriage because he lied about it. So he would, you could tell something was going on with him and things weren't good. And then you get up to get a drink of water in the middle of the night and kazam. So he would lie about it. So, which is also a problem for, our religion or code of conduct.
Well, I mean, this was lying's just an issue, period. Let's be honest.
So I'm saying, I don't mean to say that anyone that ever looks at pornography is a problem, but for some people, it absolutely, they've done functional MRI studies. You can seriously alter your brain anatomy with excessive consumption. You can also change your perception of sexuality with your partner. I noticed around the time he started going to college that he was very distant during sex. And it's not that he wasn't getting any. I am somebody that has a naturally high sex drive. It was like later he actually told me that all those years he just wasn't that into me, but that's what it felt like at the time. It's just like, what is going on? I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if I'm what is I was doing everything I could. By the time he got into college, we were commuting 2.5 hours each way for him to attend the dream school that he wanted to attend with children in tow. And he became more and more distant. Now, he was never super warm and affectionate, but he started doing things like, instead of eating dinner in the house, he would eat dinner on the porch with the window open so he could do other things, so he could like listen to us, but he wasn't really a part of the family.
That's something that my mom has always done. And actually even my wife's mom, before she passed away, always ate their dinner in the kitchen. It was, for us, it was a struggle. It's like, Mom, why don't you join us for dinner? Oh, no, it's okay. No, Mom, like, seriously.
And he just
join us for dinner.
Want to. So I think he was distinctly uncomfortable trying to interact with us. So I never could peg him as an autism or an ADD. We have some neurodivergent children, so it's not like it would have been a stigma or anything like that. But he didn't really fit the box for that. So it's kind of like this itch you can't scratch, where something's just funky, but you don't really know what it is. Well, that continued, and he became more and more increasingly distant. We ended up having one more child after he was out of college, and then we had a stillborn son, and I was not the same after that. That's just, yeah.
Yeah,
that
could be an episode in and of itself.
Yes, that's just, so I had a stillborn son, and part of me died. I knew I was in a bad situation at that time, and I knew things with him weren't good, but the day I buried my son, I remember wanting to go with him. But that's another episode.
Yeah, I'm sure that I'm not the only one that's glad that you're still here. I'm sure the rest of your kids are happy that you're still here.
During this, I will describe some of my feelings in some of this, and I am a person with deeply held religious beliefs. So suicide is not, I understand intellectually that life will always get better, but there have been times I have struggled to find the will to want to go on, and I have hurt so badly. I just wanted to die. Now, I wouldn't do anything to hasten that, but the pain was so much, I couldn't breathe and I couldn't function, and I just didn't know how I was going to find the will to want to go on. But it didn't go beyond that.
Yeah. Whereas for me, I wound up in a tub of hot water with a knife. So.
Well,
yeah.
I've also had the luxury of having people that depend on me, and I knew that. So, it's kind of this weird thing, in my mind. I've never been in a situation where I had a partner or someone that would have taken care of the kids, and I knew that. So in a way, that also ended up in the balance of karma. It works out. So after he got out of college, he went through a long period where he tried to be self-employed, and that was bad. He just didn't have the initiative. It didn't work. The economy was bad. And he started drinking heavily, and he started isolating even more, to the point I was worried. How are we going to take care of our kids? I was like, what is going on? Are you depressed? I mean, I was going, it's like there's something wrong, but I couldn't identify what the problem was. So finally, about 5 years ago, I bullied him into a job at a very well-known company that was a union job that had awesome benefits. And I thought, okay, maybe this will give him some structure, because the thing to understand about my former husband is if you understand psychological theory, he was not an alpha man. He was a beta man who really wanted to be an alpha, but he couldn't figure out how to do it. So he'd be very reserved and very passive aggressive. He'd be very snide. He'd be very unsupportive. But he wouldn't come out and just say what he thought. He wouldn't say what he felt. As far as like when we had the whole investigation and trial at CFS, he was not the dynamic personality. He struggled to get along with and understand people socially, and that was not a problem I ever had. So he started working at this job, and it did provide him, they told him what to do and how to do it. And in that regard, he excelled. But he worked at night, which was never a good thing. But he was on a serious downward spiral. Like there was one time at the 4th of July, he drank so much, he fell down on a curb and literally broke his face up. And the police called me to come pick up the kids. I mean, so this was not a little bit of drinking. This was, I really was scared he was going to crashed the car on the way to work and he was going to kill someone else and he was going to live.
And that's the thing about drunk driving is that in an accident, the worst thing you could do is stiffen up. And when you're inebriated, you don't stiffen up in time. So that's why a lot of times they survive. While the person that's the one being hit, they stiffen up. And that's usually what kills them. They're too rigid.
Yes. So I knew there was something, the last, let's see, 18 months to 2 years before he went to jail.
And I'm going to say really fast that when you said that the police called you, I thought that they were going to say, like, ask, did you shove him down the stairs? Did you, was it the doorknob?
He took it was even worse. He took the kids to a 4th of July gathering at a public place so they could watch the fireworks. And he consumed so much alcohol, he fell down and bruised his face and was bleeding, and he couldn't take the kids home.
Yeah, I have a family member that got so smashed one time. They were walking home. Now it was a community event, so they only had to walk to get there, not even a block. But on their way home, they fell over they tripped over nothing, fell and broke their nose and fractured their eye socket.
Oh yeah, he was messed up for a while. So he was doing increasingly erratic things. And so I was asking him, do you need to go, what is going on? Do you need to go to therapy because the insurance would have covered it? Do you need to go to confession? What do you need? What is going on? And he just wouldn't answer. And so it's in what the hell do you do? I knew the situation was utterly unsustainable, but it's like you're on a roller coaster ride and you don't know how to get off. And so, and there was all sorts of, issues in our marriage, with, what I did for a living and that he wasn't supportive, but that's, we can get into that if you want later. So I took one of our kids for a medical test and I came back home, and it was a big medical test. It was, so it was not a low stress thing. And when I got home, one of the kids that had been abused said, "Mom, we need to go for a walk." And because we live in a small house. And so when you need to talk, you go for a walk. And so we went for a walk and she told me, and it was like, it was the Twilight Zone. It was like a surreal, time was not moving normally. That's the best way I can describe it. It was an out of body experience. And
so is it kind of like on that scene on Breaking Bad when he found out he had cancer? The only thing he could talk about was you have mustard on your shirt.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you can remember some of your sentences are very heightened, and then the rest of them are like dead. And so we went back to the house and I confronted him and he admitted it. And I just said, "Get the fuck out of my house. You need to go somewhere that has no kids because I don't even know what to do right now. Just get out, go somewhere where they don't have kids. I don't care what excuse you have. This isn't my problem. Get out. And so I called our local priest because I really didn't know what it's like. It's like your higher brain functions are not working. Normally, I could have logically thought through what the next step was. At that time period, I like collapsed on the sidewalk. I couldn't breathe. I did not know what to do with myself. So he said, well, you have to go to the police station and turn him in. And so I went to the police station and made a report. And we had a week from the time, because they couldn't arrest him based on my accusation. They had to
they need evidence.
Assemble a task force, and they had to interview the children. That took 7 days. So you don't know if they're going to show up at your door. Do you go to work? Do you send the kids to school?
That probably was the longest 7 days of your life.
It's like purgatory. And at the same time, I have him calling me. He did not realize what he was up against. He really thought we would divorce and he wouldn't have custody of the kids, but he thought he'd still have an apartment and he'd still have his job. Utterly delusional.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
goodness.
Yes. He probably would have committed suicide if he knew.
Yeah, and this state, they don't fuck around here with that.
So so they came, they confiscated our guns because fuck him, he told them about them. And we had this week. So they interviewed the kids, they arrested him, and then CFS got involved. And I understand why CFS got involved. I have no quibble with them. I had nothing to hide. But they have this thing that they do when there's a situation like ours, where it's called a safety meeting. And they bring in about 12 social workers. And you literally bring in my case, it was almost 20 people that have known me, from my sister-in-law to people that had known us for a long time, character witnesses, basically. And they put your entire life on trial, from your sex life to how you interacted with your former husband. They decide what you knew, what you didn't know, what you should have known, what you should have done in minutia. Your entire life is on trial. I had an attorney, but the attorneys don't go to those. So you're on your own.
Really fast, we do have a question from JB. They're asking, what's CFS?
Child and Family Services.
That's what I thought.
So when there is a significant sexual abuse allegation, they investigate the entire family in our state.
Yes.
So it was to decide if I was fit to have custody of the children. So they investigate
That's also
everyone.
sometimes known as CPS, Child Protective Services.
Yeah. So
depending on the
we
state.
live as CFS. Yeah. So
we actually have both here, honestly.
Depending on where you live.
Yeah.
So that was one of the most, it sounds really weird, but it was one of the most difficult experiences in my life. And one of the most, in a way, uplifting experiences, because I could look around that table and I knew that day I was not alone. I had people that loved me and cared about me. And even though I was in the depths of hell, somehow we were going to get out of this. His criminal case took quite a while to go through the system because he got a public defender. And there was a lot of discussion about a trial to improve his quality of life in jail. And I told him under no uncertain circumstances through his lawyer that there would be no trial. He'd already signed a confession. And so the honorable thing he could do was to spare the children testifying against their father. Nobody wants to do that.
No. I mean...
And I said, I will hate him with the heat of 1,000 burning suns if he ever does that. So ultimately, 9 months later, he did plead guilty and accepted his sentencing.
And honestly, I think that there's a special layer of hell for people that are aware of what it will do to their children and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
Especially because we were To me, it felt like we were arguing over semantics because we weren't arguing his guilt or innocence. We were trying to get his number of years in jail reduced. And I just wanted no part of that. So I'm sorry. That's just no.
Not your concern. Don't even care. I get it.
No, I actually got a restraining order when it first happened, so he couldn't leverage his equity in the house for his defense. I'm like, you signed a confession, live with it.
Right. Yeah, like I had a family member that it crossed state lines, so the feds got involved.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that was awesome being called by the FBI and being interviewed by them about it.
Wow.
But yeah, and even though I didn't get touched, my sister did, and if it had gone to trial, I would have wanted to go there just to say, look, maximum sentence for this asshole.
And it's hard to go to court. And now, granted, we were fortunate. His criminal sentencing was still during COVID. And so he was on a screen, but he was so far, it was aimed toward the judge. We could hear his voice, but we couldn't see him. He was not physically present in the court. Yeah, one of the small mercies of COVID.
Yeah, my family member wound up getting esophageal cancer, and it was a slow and painful death, although they were also going into... damn it. I had the term.
What are you thinking of?
Like when you can't... Like your memory's just shot.
Not
Alzheimer's. Dementia. Yeah, but he did have lots of moments of clarity where you could see the flames of hell in his eyes. He knew where he was going. And the only reason I went to the funeral was just to verify the body was in the casket.
Death report wasn't good enough for you, huh?
No. I went to also because my younger cousins had no idea about what he had done. My older cousins were all fully aware because a lot of them were victims. So it was kind of like to help support them and to confirm, body in casket, this is done.
Well, I think supporting them is absolutely critical because one of the things that's so difficult about sexual abuse is how socially isolating it is. For example, so he's serving 50 years to life. That means it's like he died. So you get rid of their stuff. You deal with all of the legal issues. If he had died, say in an accident, you could post about it on Facebook. People would bring casseroles. They would say, I am so sorry. They would remember. It's like a way the community can rally around a person in need of support.
Right.
Oftentimes with sexual abuse, the victims may not be believed. They are often ostracized by the legal system. And it's not something that it's the club that you get to join that no one wants to join.
Right.
And so
definitely.
You're not going to go and post about it on social media. In my case, I was incredibly fortunate that really only one person that I would have thought was close to me was like, well, I love you, but I just can't manage this right now. I've got too much in my own life. Most everybody was really awesome, and they might not have known how to help, but they could at least say, I'm so sorry, or something, because not everybody knows what to say. Not that you need them to, but many times people are socially isolated significantly.
Whereas I reached out and said, hey, even if it's 3 a.m, you need to call someone, call me.
It's just because it's like you're grieving the loss of the life that you thought you had and the life that you should have had if the abuser would have made appropriate choices. And you can't change it, but it's still very difficult to deal with. I mean, we all went to therapy. Everybody is basically, to greater and lesser degrees, doing well at this point. One of my older children Doesn't speak to me, though, because they wanted to keep it very secretive and very hush-hush, you know. And I'm like, first of all, this is a matter of public record. We have an unusual last name. And so, and at the end of the day, what's even more important is that the way these things continue in families through generational cycles is because people keep them quiet. They're the skeleton in the closet. It's the cancer that hasn't killed you yet. Well, yay. How is that living or dealing with it when you just go, oh my God, this is such a horrible thing. But you know what? Going through the system, I understand why people don't want to go there and they don't want to deal with it. People think that it's easier to shove under the rug, but it's like a cancer. It just grows and it will utterly consume you.
And it's like the movie Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. There was a quote that was said in it that has really resonated with me, and it really seems like it's very real. You pass your demons on to your children. If you don't slay the demon, your children will have to deal with it.
Yes, it grows into some. Yes, and you know what? Then they will often pick someone that will. You will pick someone that can have a higher propensity to reoffend. To continue the cycle on. Right. So I told the kids, I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter where we live or what we do or anything else. What matters is that you guys get to the point to where you are okay to such a degree. This will never happen in this family again. I care about nothing less. And so we've had all kinds of, minus the one kid. We've had really hard conversations about how do these things go on and how do you have healthy relationships and those sorts of things, because this went on in my husband's family. It went on in my family. This has gone on for a long time. And my story and my family is not particularly exceptional in that. There's a lot of people that have gone through this.
Yeah. I still remember at Christmas time to my family that one family member always said, like the relationship between the two, it seemed to be really tight because they had this little catchphrase that went back and forth. Didn't realize it was a grooming phrase.
Yeah, it just so I
like
think
when
that...
when the lid popped off and we found out what was going on, then thought about that. I was like, oh shit. That was ballsy to use that in front of the whole family.
Well, and it's like hardcore drugs. They get to where they need something harder and stronger to get a fix.
Yep, to get that same, as they call it, like chasing the dragon. Yeah,
because your brain is biologically designed in such a way to protect you from doing certain things. So to commit these kinds of abuses, you have to breach your natural protection, whether you do it through a lot of pornography or through abuse or a combination. Those are the two main ways, because your brain you're designed to not look at your children and think of them as sexual objects. That's not a normal thing. Now, one of the interesting things,
you know how hard it was. You know how hard it is for me to look at my adult children and be like, I know you guys are screwing. Like, I have grandkids. I still don't like it.
Yeah, that doesn't mean I need to know the details.
Right?
So one of the difficult things about these kinds of issues is there's not really a good way to rehabilitate these people meaningfully back into society. You don't like to say, well, once you've done this, you can never come back. But I think there is an element of that. I think, we were talking about in the pre-show, having, people or places where there's, absolutely no contact with kids, or, it's a hard thing, because you can't just go back into the community.
No. I mean, it's like having a rabid dog and you're like, okay, well, we cleaned the foam off the mouth. The dog's still rabid.
And it's just one of those things where it's just sad all the way around.
I mean, their life is destroyed too.
Oh, yes. You know what? That's, at least in our situation, he had a psychiatric break when he went to jail, and he still doesn't have a firm grasp of reality. I can't fix that, and I don't, it's not my problem. I'm not married to him anymore, but and if you look at it from a psychiatric rehabilitation point, there's no way for him to meaningfully work or to try to reintegrate back into society.
Oh, no, so you put down, like, have you ever committed a felony on your application? You have to say yes and have to say what it is. That's the kind of answer that everybody should be like, no, you are not coming to work for me.
Yeah, the only way you can actually work in those kinds of situations is under the table, really. There's most of these sorts of convictions have lifelong registry, those sorts of things. Some people go to other states, but even you have to have somebody that's willing to support you. That's not my problem.
Oh God, what was the name of that? Of course, yeah, Megan's Law. That's what it was.
Yes. And
one thing I can say is I'm glad that Megan's Law, they finally went ahead and they added the delineation from things like, technically it was statutory rape, although they're still together. It was like he was 18, she was 16. That's only 2 years apart. They're married, they have kids, but because he was 18, he's a sexual offender. I'm glad that they have that as like, well, that's really low risk versus like your former husband.
Yes,
that's the big red mark, the high risk. Yeah,
they have actually 3 classifications of sex offenders in the state now, which is probably a more balanced view, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're like, oh yeah, it was statutory rape, but we're 2 years apart and we're married, I'm still with them. Yeah, okay, you know what? I'll hire you. That's fine. That was just, well, that sucks. That sucks that you had to get dealt with that.
Exactly. So, but that's a different issue than,
Oh, you touched your own children? Stay the fuck away from me.
Yeah, you just can't, yeah. So, then you have to figure out, how does going on and being okay look like? Because, the system, for all that it is intended to do, does not do a good job of giving people the resources to function independently and be okay.
I mean, yeah, well, talk a little bit about that. I actually wanted to mention that. That's a good segue into it. You were a homemaker, right?
So I was a homemaker, and I did have a job, but I had a 10-hour-a-week contract. But the work that I did was highly specialized in a niche area. So if you were very good at what you did, people didn't care if you had a degree or not. So I've also done nonprofit work in that genre. And I thought, okay, obviously I'm going to have to go to work. So I asked our social worker if she could help me do 2 things. She could hook me up on welfare. She could tell me how to work middle class, but, we had the house and stuff. She could tell me how to do an asset reduction. But when I asked her to help...
Let's go ahead and get rid of your house that's almost paid off.
Yes, so that I can go on welfare. But I asked her literally for 2 things. I said, I need someone to help me redo my resume, and I need career counseling. What am I good at besides this one super specialized thing that I do? Because it was not looking like it was going to transfer into full-time employment.
With benefits and all that.
Correct. It was never designed to be that.
Right. It's like, what skills did I pick up doing this that can transfer to other things?
Correct. And so I looked at other nonprofit work. I mean, someday I may write out the story of all the jobs I applied for in that year, and I may find it funny. At this point, I'm not enough degrees of separation away from it to find it funny, but I applied for many things. And this was during COVID, and things were locked down, and it was just horrible, which is actually how I ended up going back to college, because I'm like, I need skills so that I can have a job and be successful. So I didn't actually start getting really a lot of career assistance, and really until my second year in college, when I started working for the university. And then I got to know people, and I could say, hey, how did you get where you got? Because in my situation, what I would love to do to pursue my intellectual and academic capability is going to be something different than what I need to do to take care of my family.
Right.
And maybe at another point, I will pursue those things. And I have certainly planned it in such a way to set the bedrock so that if I have that opportunity down the road. But in reality, I'm not 20 anymore, so I care about things like good health insurance and this thing called retirement.
Yep. I'm
so
very
I
familiar with
have
that.
actually eliminated some lucrative things I could do, because do I really want to spend the last third of my working years trying to prove I can outwork 20-year-olds? No, not really. I need something that can accommodate what I'm good at, even if it's not the most intellectually stimulating thing to do.
Yay, punching holes. Woo!
Hey, database management and people skills.
Hey, actually, you know what? Honestly, I did go to school for a little while to do database administration and architect.
Got it.
But I have that's my mind works that way, where databases to me are just fascinating. But for a lot of people, it's like, this is hell.
So I dislike it less than I thought I would, because there's an element of being able to help people, and it's something that I can do that's stable. It's not going into academic research and some other things that I'd really like to do, but who knows? Maybe down the road.
Well, it's like, I really wanted to be an entomologist, but you know what a career being an entomologist looks like? It looks like traveling all over the world to pick up little contracts that are 3 months or 6 months here and there, and you have to out-of-pocket everything, including the, getting to the job, your own place to stay, your own insurance, and you basically are making minimum wage while you do it. Yeah.
Academia is not a lot better. I mean,
yeah.
Not unless and I'm not in a position where moving is a possibility. So I'm like, well, you just got to do the best you can with where you're at. And where I'm at is actually a pretty kick-ass place. So I'm really lucky.
You're like a stone's toss away from a lot of amazing things, and not even, and your own town has some pretty amazing things too. So
yeah,
it's not like...
so I'm really lucky to have been where I am, and in a situation like this, it's very easy to, especially we're getting ready to come up on Thanksgiving, and you can be very cognizant of how fortunate you are. I remember in the process sitting in my house, and there are these people analyzing my house around my dining room table. This was after the big CFS. This was a smaller, thing. And I remember looking around my house and looking at these people and knowing if I was a different skin color, or say lived in a trailer instead of middle-class suburbia, how differently the trajectory of my children's lives would have been. That's just, and there's not anything special that I did. Living modestly is something that many people do. So it's not like, I am any magically better than any of the hardworking people that live, half an hour from me. So, but you become very aware of how incredibly fortunate you are.
That's awesome that were able to get that, though.
Well, you don't have a choice, okay? So you either do one of a couple of things. You lay down and die, and then your kids are left with nothing. Or you do something which I've seen many women do, which is where you go and you find the new flavor of the month, and you repeat the fucking cycle over again.
Oh,
and your kids pay the price.
And there's also the option of gold digging.
Oh, come on. I don't know if my bullshitting skills are just that good. Maybe they are, but I just don't care enough. Actually, I got into academics, and I discovered I was good at things I didn't think I'd be good at. And so, I got some positive reinforcement, and I discovered that you can have a lot of intellectual intimacy with people that you're not partnered with. And so I was able to kind of analyze what my needs were and how I could meet them without immediately repartnering. So that if that situation ever comes up in the future, great. But I need to be okay myself before I could ever do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Bexy and I are having a little conversation in the chat room. Yeah, she's saying, or you can ignore your child and tell them they're a liar with an angry face, which is what happened to Bexy. And I went,
which is horrible.
Yeah.
I just, I feel for every person that's been in that situation, because no matter how you're related to the victim and the perpetrator, it's horrible. There's just, that's why it's such a serious crime.
Right. Even though I wasn't touched, I remember vividly the day that my sister was, and I didn't even know it happened. It's just one of those, something just didn't feel right, and it stuck. And it was also the day that my sister and our relationship fractured that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it affects everything. I think that's why, you have to deal with your own trauma, and you have to be aware of, the sorts of things that can lead you to a place where you can do that. Now, I don't know if I said this earlier, but I don't think that, I think you can say pornography or drug abuse or previous abuse is maybe a precursor, but everyone always has agency and free will, and you still have the ability to make the right choice. And if you fail to make that right choice, then people are going to suffer.
Right, and I can't say,
well said.
Having been blacked out drunk, even then, I would never would have crossed those lines. Oh, I made bad decisions when I was blacked out drunk. I no mistake there. But even then, I was able to keep my dick in my pants. So, yeah.
Yeah, so, because I think there's a lot of, people try to use excuses and escapism to justify their behavior, regardless of what they're trying to excuse or escape from. And it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you still have the choice to be a decent human being or to not. And, this is just, the more I've studied it, outside of my own family, this is just one of those things. It just goes nowhere good. It's like Dante's descent into hell, or a cancer, or something. And the only way to get rid of it is to cut it out and let the sun be on it so you can actually heal up. That's the only way. There's nothing else to do.
No, otherwise you're going to let it fester, and it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, and it won't heal.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's that whole thing of it could lead to other things, which is kind of like a secondary infection that's caused because of it, and yeah.
Oh, absolutely. At least in my former husband's case, the alcoholism was caused by the guilt of knowing what he had done.
Right.
And no matter how much he drank, there was no way to drink it away.
No, God, no. I mean,
now there are ways he could have.
He could block it and push it down and mental barrier it, but it's there.
Well, and he could have tried to deal with it. He could have. Would it have been the same? No, but he could have. The legal and moral consequences got bigger the farther along it went. I think what I'm trying to say is, there's a big difference between going, oh crap, I screwed up, and you contact who you need to contact and you do what you need to do to work through that, versus it becoming a bigger, larger thing with more people involved.
Right. Dang, usually I'm really jovial. Even on these kinds of episodes, I can usually find some kind of a joke or something. This was just...
Well,
it hits hard.
It's hard. The thing is, now we've been in this situation for a number of years. And I think the thing I really would like to emphasize is that everybody's doing okay. People went to therapy. They did what they needed to do. Is it perfect? No. You know what? My children don't have a father anymore. And that's one of them is young, and it's hard. And it's hard for those that were abused. And it's hard for the ones that weren't. Because in our situation, not all of the children were abused.
Yeah, survivor's bias. Or not survivor's bias, survivor's guilt.
Oh, yes. And, there was a dysfunctional relationship between one of the kids and him in the first place. So actually, that kid qualified for a whole year of special therapy to prevent PTSD. And you know what? I'm grateful for that. You know what? She never would have gotten the help otherwise. So that's one of the reasons I was agreed to come on the show, is I'm like, we're actually doing okay. Is it easy? No. It's still some days incredibly difficult. There's no easy way out of this, but we're doing okay. We really are. Right. And the kids are talking about, we've reinvented some of our family traditions, and there's things we've let go of, and there's things we've tried. And, you do the best you can.
And just for everybody listening, in case they're wondering, yes, I've known Sarah since before she had any kids.
Yes.
So that's why I said when I offered, hey, even if it's 3 a.m., it's because I've known Sarah for years. I wouldn't just do that for just any random stranger that's like, hey, I'm having a rough time.
Would. Come on. Yeah, you would. Come on, I know you.
If I get to know them a little bit, I might. But I have to get to know them first.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a wild cat that appeared in the chat.
I know, I'm so glad she's back.
So am I. Cat had a little bit of a rough time. She's a regular, one of her favorites in the chat. And her avatar, it's a cat with pink sunglasses. It's actually pretty awesome. So, how about yourself? I mean, it sounds like you were neglected more than you were abused.
Oh, yes. So it was a situation where we married when we were young, and for many years we were in a religiously conservative community. What I mean by that is men are the heads of households, their rules go. I mean, didn't wear pants. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And
this is coming from a guy who doesn't know how to be head of household.
Yeah, he didn't. That was part of the problem, is he didn't know how to do it. And so if I attempted to have any sort of leadership, he resented it. So on one hand, he wanted me to be his police person. And on the other hand, he was resentful of making any decisions. So it was kind of this horrible conundrum that built while he was in college.
It was a built-in catch-22.
Yes, it's a no-win. It's like you're in the trenches between the two warring parties, and there's no middle ground. There's no way for. So a partnership is supposed to be both people give 100% and both people win. This was not like that. This was in the, and when you're in that sort of religious environment, it is permissible to seek a divorce under very specific circumstances.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's qualified as one.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. However, not having a rough marriage or being neglected or something like that is not cause for a divorce. So it really started shifting when he was in college. And I started going, well, you know what? I have to do what I'm going to do to be okay. So once he got out of school, I had this realization one day, and because one of our kids is medically fragile, and I had put on a fair amount of weight from stress and living in hospitals and dealing with him. And I realized I couldn't get off the sofa by myself. So I went and found CrossFit, and I started doing things it was probably about almost 10 years from the time I started doing things that made me happy and feel alive to the time when it all blew up. And, I guess I'm grateful for that now, because I got to the point where I got strong enough so when I knew what was going on, I was capable of taking the appropriate action. I never would have not believed the children or anything like that. I always told them when they were young, if there was something bad that was going on, mommy will always love you. Mommy will always be there for you. Mommy will always believe you. No matter what you do, I will always love you. Those sorts of things.
Yep.
But it became more of a thing. The more independent I got, the more threatening to him I became.
Well, yeah, as you said, he had, and some people don't subscribe to the alpha male, beta male, sigma male thing.
I think that it's a hard and fast thing, but I think it's a way to understand groups of people.
Right, and the way that your life was organized, it actually is a thing. It mattered. And he's a beta who now sees you turning into an alpha, and of course that's a threat when he's supposed to be head of household.
And he was utterly unwilling. It's not only that he didn't know how to be an alpha, he was unwilling to do the work. He wanted to sit on his chair and have his meals brought to him and sit on his ass and do his thing.
He wanted
more
his
than
cake
he wanted
and to
to
eat
do
it
the work.
too.
Yes. So that's what was so difficult about it. It wasn't that he was saying, okay, if you want to go do this big cool thing in your profession, I'll come and support you, even though I really am not interested in it. No, he just stayed home. He wouldn't go to professional events, and he wouldn't be necessarily antagonistic, but he was not supportive.
Right.
And so
one of the big things is you have the evening dress. You do your thing, yes. You have the evening dress, and let's face it, after you do your performance, if your partner is undressing you, that's kind of a hot thing, and that's something that, as a performer myself, you look forward to that.
No, and he would never do it. And I would travel for work, and they'd put you up in swanky hotels, and I went alone. And you know what? On one hand, I'm grateful for it, because I had some ways of making some incredible memories with incredible people, but it was so hard to do it alone. And, so in some ways it wasn't really, sounds really weird, but it's almost relieving when we divorced, because then at least I wasn't carrying his dead weight with me. But it was just profoundly sad, because my entire family put everything into supporting him and trying to help him and he had all the tools he needed to better himself. So regardless of his personal demons, it's not like he had a lack of opportunity here. And so his failure to do that affected me. It affected our kids. It affected our parents.
I'm sure it went beyond that too. I mean,
oh yes,
any friendships that you have, they get affected because
Or, we used to be, our religious community has an ethnic involvement. And so, you go to these sorts of things and people are like, oh, how so-and-so? And you go, how much do you really want to know? You get the deer in the headlights. Because what happened is this happened right before COVID. And so, because he was arrested in September of 2019, we were in it took to probably almost right before, so by September, about 2 months into it, I knew, that we had a really good plan. We had a social worker. We were doing what we needed to do, with the exception of one particular child. And that became it became a very painful thing. But it took once we got through that, by the time we would have been at the point where people would have started figuring it out, it was COVID. So, it took longer, and we still have situations where you run into someone at the grocery store and they ask how he is. Less often than they used to, but,
So how is he? Fuck if I know.
Oh. Well, I have varying answers depending on who it is, how much I feel they actually need to know, and how much emotional space I have at that moment. Because sometimes it's easier just to say we're divorced. Because, now if it's someone that really knew him, that was one of the difficulties is over time, you run into people that really had tried to reach out to him and had tried to help him and really poured themselves into trying to help this guy who just appeared to be kind of lost, to find out that he was more than lost.
Yeah, it sounds like there was just something fundamentally wrong, like missing.
Well,
it's almost like it's almost like someone went and said, in a computer program, let's just go ahead and delete will2live.exe.
But here's the thing, it's inconsistent. If he really would have been in that, then that would have made him like a person with a pathological disease that just didn't feel. Oh no, because he wrote letters once he went to jail. He didn't want to get divorced. And so he felt this need to, he refused to sign all the papers when we divorced. He couldn't stop it, but he wouldn't help it along. And he actually wrote a letter once saying, no, I really wasn't autistic. And I really, all those years I claimed that I didn't feel things the way you didn't. Well, I lied, but now I really, and I really wasn't into you then, but now you are my immortal love and I would never love another and all this other bullshit. And I'm like,
excuse me?
How dare you? Just fuck you. Fuck you and fuck whatever your ship you're riding here. I mean...
It sounds like, I'm forbidden fruit, now you want me.
Yes!
And again, I have to say, the Lion, the Witch, and the audacity of that bitch.
Just love that line.
And the timing of this was like... It was sent within a month of when our wedding anniversary came. And I'm just like... Whoa. Now, I was done, way before then. And we divorced, early on. As soon as I could possibly get it done. But
it was like, I went to the police department. I went ahead and reported him, got him arrested, turned his ass in, got the restraining order, and then I immediately went and got myself a divorce. I'm pretty sure that was about the order of things.
Actually, I went to the police station. There was let's see. It took a time because you don't realize how many family law attorneys there are until you try to look in the phone book. And how many of them don't want to deal with a sexual abuse case? Let me tell you.
Like, yeah, we do family law, sexual abuse.
Just not that
Nope.
kind. Not that kind. So finally found a lawyer through a connection of a friend, thank goodness. And so I had a lawyer before the CFS meeting, but they said they don't go to those because it does not help. So within a week of when he was arrested...
The only way I can see that wouldn't help is that if a lawyer's there, it sets the tone of you're protecting something.
Yes, and they said they just don't go to them. They don't advise them. You know, if the CFS tries to take custody of the kids, they can fight that after the fact. They can't prevent them from being taken, but they can fight it after that.
Right.
Which is scary as hell. I mean, I won't lie. Because they'll tell you, we have the power to take your children away from you today.
Yeah, I've seen it happen firsthand. Not my kids, but in my house, saw somebody else's kids taken.
Yeah, and so you don't know if you're going to go home and your kids are going to be there when you go home. It's not an awesome feeling.
Yeah, no, it was quick. They're is the mother here? No, out shopping with my wife because they're like cousins. Okay, we're here to take the kids.
Well, keep in mind that from the position of the district attorney, in a case like this, they really don't give a damn about who's guilty and who's innocent. Just how many fucking convictions can they get?
Yep.
Let's be real, okay? So they already had because what happened is the guilt got to him. And so he went in and right before they talked to the kids, he went in and had a confession and confessed. Which is how they got the confession before he lawyered up.
Yeah, because the lawyer's number one thing is keep your fucking mouth shut.
Mouth shut. Well, here's the thing. This was something he did, but it wasn't a recent thing. And so, yeah, they probably could have maybe had it stick, but it wasn't. The only reason it might have stuck is there was multiple victims, but his outcome would have been very different if he had shut his mouth. But the guilt was too much. He just, so he signed a confession.
I'm not saying it's a redeemable quality, but at least you could go, you know what, at least he did the right thing there.
Oh, yeah. And I was really kind of, like I said, I was like numb that week. I'm just like, oh, let's wait and see what's going on. He wanted to get an apartment, and I'm like, you haven't talked to the police yet.
Oh, you think this is just going to go away?
I had a pretty good idea, but come on, I didn't get mad until later. Okay, it took a long time for me to actually be angry about, like, if you look at a grief process, I didn't get angry for a really long time, because I was so focused on how do I survive and how do I make sure the kids are okay. I really didn't have the luxury for quite a while of like breaking down about it or getting mad. We had to fucking survive, it was right. So that was something that was later. I got good and mad later.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
You know what? It took a while. It took almost a year. I mean, interestingly enough.
Wow. Okay, so you have a long fuse.
Well, what happened is a triaging. So I have an ability to analyze the situation and to triage and compartmentalize. And so I actually made notes of, okay, I think in 3 months, this is the signs we should be looking for. And in 6 months, we should be looking for this. And about this time frame, things are going, I actually planned it out for like 2 years when I think things are going to be okay. And son of a bitch, it was almost uncanny. I didn't realize it was more, hang on, Brad. It was more of a, how do you pace yourself for the long run? Because you realize this is a marathon race. This isn't a sprint. And so it took, because we had an open CFS case for 6 months. And it was really, and we went to therapy, and I went to therapy on my own, and the kids went to therapy. And actually it was awesome because there is a certain amount of, there's not only survivor's guilt, but there's guilt when you partner with someone who does something terrible. I understand on an intellectual level that they were his choices, and he ultimately is the one that's responsible for them.
Yep.
But they were my babies.
He chose to hide them from you and your mom. He chose, and
yes, but
there's a certain level of impressive cunning. I would have to say more than intellect, but cunning to be able to pull that off in a tiny house.
Yes. Actually, yes is a simple answer. I actually didn't find out until later because I couldn't ask the kids, when there was an open case. The morbid side of me was like, how the hell did he actually do this? And ultimately I got enough answers to have a rough outline. I don't need, I'm really good at morbid introspection. But the good thing I was able to do with therapists is like, what did I miss? And how did I screw up so badly that I missed the science for this and my baby suffered for it?
Well, I think a part of it is if you were not that kind of person, you'd never think to look for it. You wouldn't even know what to look for.
It's like, what happened here? Because normally, it's like, how did this happen? Especially because I can't express enough. That is what I wanted more than anything in the world, was for the kids to be okay. And for them to never have gone through what I went through. And that still eats at me. I understand intellectually, I understand all that, but it's one of those part of the scars element of it where that's just one of those things I can't fix. I can make sure they're okay, and I can do my damnedest to make sure that it never happens again.
Right.
But it's still really hard. The loss of the marriage was easier than living with that aspect of it.
Oh, that I can imagine.
Me too.
It was the day he signed the confession, he wanted me to go with him, and I lasted about 20 seconds. And I had to leave. I left that room. The best thing I can emotionally describe it as is the scene in Master and Commander where the mast of the ship is broken and they have to cut the guy holding onto it loose, or they're all going down with him. And you know what? Of all the parts that caused guilt, that one wasn't one of them. It's like, well, this is your problem. And I cut him loose. There was nothing else to do about it. At the end of the day, I had no desire to remain married. You would be amazed at the number of people, though, that remain married in that situation. And they choose the motherfucker over their kids.
Yeah, I mean, because that's ultimately what it is. It's like, you can't have them both.
No.
Because if you stay with him, your kids are going to be like, so mom's okay with this.
Well, actually, and in this case, the state was involved, and so the state would have taken. But they do that. They will go and they'll choose the guy over their kids, and I don't understand that at all.
I don't either.
I don't even.
And it's like, these are the people that they'll have kids. Child services comes, takes the kids. They have more kids. Child services comes back. Yeah, you can't have kids. Takes the kids.
Well,
as long as you're together, you can't have a kid.
I have come to the conclusion in this circumstance that not only are there things that I don't understand, but there are things that I pray I never get to the point where I understand them. That's fair. I think it's okay to say, I don't need to understand that. You know what? I want to be a whole, mentally stable person. And I don't think that it's possible to, there's only so much divergence you can have, is what I'm saying. So, I can just say, well, whatever. I don't want to understand it.
I think from my perspective, I think it's more that they're not necessarily picking the guy over their kids. They're picking their own gratification over everything. And, hey, he's in jail. He's going to want to be back together when he comes out. I'm his because it's easy for me. This is kind of where I think it may be coming from. It's like a narcissistic thing.
And it's a whole social thing. There's a whole social pecking order of, it's a thing. And it's just, it's sad because from my perspective, it's the kids are the ones that lose. And you know what? Being a parent is self-sacrificial. That's just, that's what you're signing up for.
Yeah. Like when you have a kid, hey, guess what? Those days of clubbing, done. Can you still go out to a club on occasion? Yeah. Get a babysitter, go out on occasion. But it's not the same.
No. And so your life is, hopefully for the better, change. Now, sometimes it's, challenging or whatever. But, so, that's, even though this is a really serious thing, it's like, we're actually doing, it's been more than 2 years. Next year will be 3. We're actually plugging along and, doing what we have to do. But it's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
Hi, Pippi. Hi.
Hi, Adam. That was Bexy's brother.
Yes. Oh, he's fine. He's awesome.
He is. I really like him. So does anybody in the chat have questions? I know we had Richard in there, and we had Kat in there. It's kind of a quiet night tonight.
Maybe we scared him off.
No, it's just the weather around here. Like I think maybe even across the nation has gotten a little bit nicer this week, and people are trying to get out while they can because it's obvious winter is coming.
Unless you live where I live.
Yeah, in which case, winter's like
in which case we'll break out the sweatshirts,
Yeah, like winter lasts all of 4 hours.
Yeah.
Sounds like I need to move
we get
there.
to put on sweatshirts. Come on now.
Yeah, but you remember where I'm from. That's not sweatshirt weather for me.
I know. You can wear shorts all year, my friend.
I do. I still do that here. Even though there are times it gets cold, I walk outside like, maybe I shouldn't have worn shorts. I will say when I moved to San Diego, I deliberately went 365 days of shorts just to do it.
Yes, because you could.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh my God. My birthday's in February. To be able to go outside and have an outdoor birthday was amazing to me. Because, I lived in snow country. Guess what happens in February? It's fucking snow.
Blizzards.
Yeah.
Hip high snow. Yeah. I don't miss that. I don't miss shoveling it.
No, God, no. Now, I don't mind, where I live, if I want to go play in the snow, it's just an hour or 2 drive to the east, and I'm in snow country again.
Yeah, but that's playing in it, not living in it.
Yep, because then I can just go, you know what, I'm done, and I can pack up and come back. Or I can even go back to my old hometown, which is about 4 hours north. And be like, yeah, I remember this shit. I remember hating living in it.
Yep, I miss some parts of it, but not others.
I miss playing in it. I miss how beautiful, like, and quiet when the snow's falling at night and taking a walk in it while it's coming down. That is amazing. Like,
yes, I agree.
Second to none. So peaceful. But then you have that slush.
Or the frozen gray mounds in the middle of the road.
The black ice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so Kat was like, doesn't have any questions because they missed the main story. They came in a little late. Long and short of it, Sarah was married to a guy that basically neglected her and, let's just say bad touch with the children. Not all of them, but some of them. And he is put away 50 years to life. So, yeah. It's like, and I have to tell you, and I know you know this because you're taking psychology classes. I know you know this, that the warning signs that he may have been doing what he did, you never would have picked up on him because you're not that kind of person. Now you are aware of them.
Yeah, it was the only possible thing I could have done is inquisited more deeply at times. But there really wasn't, it wasn't like that. We lived in, like I said, my mom lived with us. We lived in a close-knit religious, so it goes to prove that was somewhat, that's the thing one of the interesting things I got about therapy. She was like, you know what, there's really nothing you could have done because you always want to go, like when you have, because in this situation, you not only have the abuse of your children, but you have the loss of your marriage. And you go like, I have decades of photos of all of these like family photos and stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I'm not at the point where I can look at them yet. But you can't just get rid of them all because that was your kids growing up. And so how to kind of separate all of that out was really kind of challenging for me because I became the single parent, sole parent. The kids are all there and you have to listen to all of their needs that are legitimate. But at the same time, you're also dealing with the loss of your marriage and the loss of the partner that you thought you had. And, all of those sorts of emotions that go with, divorcing without an abusive situation.
Right, and adding that extra layer just makes it more complicated, I'm sure.
Yeah, because it's just, for a long time, I actually completely shunned the idea of repartnering. And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm doing my own thing. And actually, I think that was a really good point to get to was I'm okay on my own. And to really say I'm okay on my own. If I never, ever repartner or go on a date or anything like that ever again, I'd really be okay. Now, that's also a lie because I will admit I am a sensory-seeking person. And so the thought of never kissing someone or doing anything else ever again is really, I don't know if I can say that. But I really would be okay. I might not always be happy about it. Well, you can say that about anything, really.
Right.
There's a lot of situational circumstance that you get put into where you may not like it, but you're really okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about going through my life. There's been a number of times where it's like, I don't like this, but I'm okay.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think you should always be, striving to be better and be a better person and all of that. But you can really be okay. Because what I really...
Be a better person? Come on, you know what my New Year's resolutions is this year coming up? Nothing. I'm perfect as it is. Everybody needs to adjust to me.
Good luck. Good luck.
Wait a minute. With you. Wait a minute. Why is Macy's calling me?
I think we need to deflate the ego just a little bit.
But I think it's important if you've gone through a significant trauma. It doesn't have to be this kind of abuse. But if you've gone through a significant trauma, I think getting to the point where you're really okay on your own is an important place to get to. Whether it takes you months or years or decades, where you can say, I can stand on my own 2 feet and I'm a whole person. And so that if you are evaluating someone as a potential partner, you can, say, well, I am what I am. You're not, so many people are hurting so much. They look for love in the wrong places. They want someone to fix and fill in all the holes, and you can't fix anyone. That's actually, in all of this, in retrospect, some of the hardest things to learn is you can't fix somebody. You can't even make them do the things that you know they need to do to fix them. And sometimes love is just not enough. You know, you hope you can love someone and you can provide all of the tools and try to get them to go to therapy and do what they need to do. But at the end of the day, they have agency.
Yep.
And that's one of the hardest things I have ever had to go through is you can't do it for someone.
True. And actually, one thing that I was told after my divorce was to get a house plant. I'm not allowed, they told me, I'm not allowed to date until I can keep a house plant alive for a full year. Because a house plant demands nothing, but is completely dependent on you.
Yeah.
And if you're in a place where you can take care of a house plant, you're in a good spot. That was actually a pretty cool little litmus test, I thought.
That's awesome.
I got a succulent. So I was like...
You cheated. You cheated.
No.
You should have gotten an orchid.
Oh, God, keeping an orchid alive for a year? In this climate? Not happening.
They're temperamental little motherfuckers. I mean,
even
in my climate, it's a special thing.
San Jose is the perfect climate for orchids. This one lady got an orchid. She didn't want it, so she tossed it outside. Fucker survived for years.
Well, that's just not fair.
Being ignored. It was just, the whole thing, if there was enough fog to come in to give it just enough moisture, and like she'd nail them up to trees and they would still keep growing. Even with exposed roots, they would survive for years.
That's crazy.
I was like, damn. Well, it's like, that's
really crazy.
Like in my hometown, it used to be known as Berryvale because of the strawberries, or Strawberry Valley.
Yeah.
Fuckers grow like weeds there, man. You try to kill them, and they're like, ha ha, that's cute, and they keep growing.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, roses. A lot of people are like, oh, roses are so temperamental. Yeah, well, live here. Right around the corner from me is Roseville.
Uh-huh.
The roses here are like the strawberries up there. They grow like fucking weeds. They're like, yes, crack it cement. Fuck yeah. Where everybody else is like, oh, the pH is slightly off. Our roses are like, don't care. Give me that road pollution. Yeah, we'll grow.
Oh my gosh.
So, after that tangent, so there was one line that you said about when you were doing your CrossFit that had me absolutely dying about how your ex felt like that you were stepping on his dick. I don't remember how you phrased it exactly. Well, because
what happened is I went and did it without him. You know what? I was very cool going and doing it without him. And so I went and did it for a while. And then he thought he could be all Billy Badass and come in and show me how to do it. And I could outlift him. And it sounds really ridiculous now, but it was one of the few things we actually overtly fought over, and I'm like, I actually told him at one point, how dare you? You know what? This isn't, I'm going to the gym by myself. I knew, okay, so our marriage was
I'm not doing this to get bigger and stronger than you. I mean, bonus!
I think, so two things. One, he couldn't handle that I was bigger and stronger than he was. And two, he was scared to death. When you go to CrossFit, you're in close proximity to people of all ages, genders, and persuasions, okay? If you've got a problem looking at someone's booty in tight clothing, then CrossFit is really not the place for you. No, most places are super cool about it, and people have really, really clear boundaries. Some places, not so much, but there's a lot of scantily clad, very muscular, very sweaty people. And he just did not fit into that culture, and he tried, and then it became this whole thing. And it was probably the first thing I did that I refused to quit because he didn't like it.
Hey, you know what? It was good for you. And
absolutely.
You still have to take care of yourself.
I'm still involved in CrossFit. I don't go quite as often as I need to right now, but I love the community, and it's been, you know what? Let's just face it. For endorphin junkies, I mean, come on. All the feel-good hormones are there in a very platonic way. So,
yeah. Although I'm sure that there's probably someone out there somewhere in CrossFit that has the like the sports bra, but in the back it says "my butt's down there" with an arrow pointing down to the butt.
Oh, you know what? There was a phase when CrossFit was more of a phenomenon rather than a sport. I mean, people would have so CrossFit involves Olympic lifting, and so the two main Olympic lifts are a snatch and a clean and jerk. And so the double entendre on the snatch
and the clean and jerk.
Put it on T-shirts.
Oh yeah,
or clean and people would make it was dumb. And let's face it. Okay, so CrossFit is like a family, and so some of them are super cool and respectful, and people don't spit on the floor. No one slaps each other's ass unless you're, in a relationship. They don't sleep with each other. And then there's some places that are just a hedonistic den of pleasure. And, that's...
It's so there's all den.
Flavors of them, So... but for the most part, they're very affirming, welcoming places of all people's sizes, and abilities. But it was very threatening to him.
Yeah, God forbid you start actually, getting into shape and enjoying yourself.
Oh yeah, you know what? That was actually the hardest thing for me is he, as I became stronger and my sex drive when, especially the age I was at was going up, his was going down. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm
going to take this little pill. I'm going to crush it up and put it in your drink.
You know what? But it was so, I'm trying to struggle with how to say this politely. It was so obvious that he just didn't want to be doing it. Even when he was doing it, it was very obvious that was not what he wanted to be doing, which just kind of makes you feel like shit. Just,
wow.
And so, you're trying to balance your legitimate need for a sexual outlet because you're married versus, do I really want to deal with this bullshit today? Yeah.
You look at his eyes; they're glassed over, and he's a million miles away.
He wouldn't even look at me. It got to the point he wouldn't even look at me, and I'm like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Most men would be thrilled to say, "Gee, let's have sex." Not him. There were a few times I'm like, "This is your fucking obligation. Now, man up and do it."
Yeah, for me, it's like, "Hey, you want to have sex? I'll take off towards the bedroom, turn back around, grab your hand, and say you should come too."
And it wasn't like it was always that way. It was definitely something that developed. The farther down he went, the more, like I said, I knew that he struggled with pornography. I had no idea that he struggled with anything beyond what I would typify as normal pornography, whatever that is. I had no idea that he would have been remotely attracted to children or anything like that.
Yeah, that's
because at that point, it's not about sex; it's about power.
Right.
So,
that was actually a great line from House of Cards, actually, which is, sex isn't about sex. Like wars were fought over sex, but sex is about power. It's about dominating someone else.
Well,
it can be.
I could make an argument for that it's not.
Well, yeah, so can I, but if you're going after people that you perceive as weaker than you, it is absolutely
yes.
about power.
It's absolutely about power. It's not about sex or sexual desire or sexual gratification. It is elevating yourself by demeaning someone else. So it's not even about sex anymore. That sex is just a vehicle.
Right. Oh, damn, what was his name? I can see him clear as day. I didn't sleep well last night.
It's Run Club.
Yeah. William Dafoe in Boondock Saints. Great example of he wasn't gay. It was all about power. He slept with other men, but he was on top. He was never the bottom. When they tried to cuddle, he'd be like, "What are you, gay? Get away from me." You know, it was about power. He had to be the absolute
See, that's
dominant.
okay. Now that's an interesting thing that you bring this up because, sorry, bunny trails here. He had an extreme aversion to intimacy, so he didn't want to hold hands. He didn't want to cuddle. He didn't want, I chalked it up to sensory avoiding.
I love holding hands. I love cuddling. I love all that.
Well, you look at it back. So in my position, you're looking at it in retrospect, and you realize really how messed up that it was.
Because it didn't start that way, I'm sure.
Well,
really,
he was never super affectionate. Even when we very, very beginning, he would be present and he would be pleasant, but he was never super affectionate. I was always much more aggressive than he was. And then, like I said, then we went through a phase where we were in a really conservative area. And I really tried to give him the space to do what he needed to do to, like, for a psychological term, to self-actualize. And I always thought, well, if he got through college, or if this, or there was always some if only, maybe then he'll get his shit together. Because we're married, my destiny is like tied to his. But it wasn't that I was seeking it out just for the power and, self-gratification.
Right.
It was something done out of necessity. And, and I would even tell him, you know what, I am resentful that you're putting me in this situation. I am your wife. I am not your mother. I am not your police person. And in retrospect, there were things like really early on, like a pastor somehow thought it was a good idea to make him accountable to me for his pornography addiction. And at the time I was like, what the fuck? This isn't my job. I'm your wife. I don't need to be your accountability person and putting monitoring software on our computers and monitoring your activity. So that put us in this whole unhealthy dynamic of I was somehow supposed to be monitoring his behavior. Knowing what I know now, that would have been the hit the road point,
Yeah.
And, in retrospect.
Well, yeah. I mean, hindsight's 20/20.
Well, yes. I mean, I have a lot of those, but that was, I didn't know. It's one of those, like I said, especially when you're in a whole family of neurodivergence, it's easy to want to help people and to want to help them realize their dreams in legitimate, good, and healthy ways.
Yes.
In this case, it just turned into this whole something else. Not that all of it, not that everybody would be in that position, but it just, you look back at it in retrospect and you look at all the time and all the money and all the resources, and they still just didn't. I don't understand why they put everybody else through that. I think there's a time where you say, maybe this isn't for me, or I don't know. Why put on the charade for decades? I don't know. That's in the, navel gazing that I'll never actually figure out.
I mean, it sounds like to me that you lost yourself in the marriage over time, and it almost seems like CrossFit was the beginning of you finding yourself again.
Well, sort of. It wasn't even so much that I think what happened, it was I wanted to provide something for the children I never had, but I didn't know how to do it. And so I did what I thought I could, and then I got involved in the tyranny of the urgent. Like, one of our kids has profound medical issues. and got sucked into that vortex of being his primary caregiver for a really long time. And so, you know, the next thing I knew, I was, 10 years older. It was, especially, with his need to go to college and, Alex's needs and everything. It was just like a whirlwind, trying to triage the tyranny of the urgent, keep everybody happy, alive, that sort of thing.
Right. And then all of a sudden, all your aspirations are just...
Oh, I put them on hold.
Yeah, they're not even on the back burner. They've been put in Tupperware and stuck back in the fridge.
From the time I was in early 20s to mid 30s, I did nothing more than try to be a good, subservient wife, keep the house, keep the kids. I think the only superpower I indulged myself in was I cooked, and I'm a badass cook. That was it. I didn't do hobbies. I had friends, but they were more like superficial friends, because I knew that the community of people we were in, I wasn't like them. And I couldn't mentally make I think God and religion and spirituality is a lot more bigger and grander than some people think it is.
Oh, I agree.
And so, but I kept it all to myself. It wasn't until, ultimately I started going to CrossFit and I made friends and I learned how to work hard, and I learned that I was a way more awesome person than I thought I ever was. Because when you come from being an abused kid from a broken family, your sense of self is completely warped.
Oh, totally.
Completely warped. So I went from being an abused kid, and at the time, we went through the court system in another state. They had this whole bullshit scheme of reunifying people, and that didn't work. It took my parents 5 years to divorce. It was not this cut and dry, fuck you, and the ship you sailed on. So my sense of identity and non-existent self-esteem, I mean...
Uh-oh, did we lose you?
I was high, I had music.
Wow, we were right on the
and I wanted to believe it to get better, really. That's why I was alive. And then it wasn't until I was in my 30s, and I think I was. And I became exposed to Eastern Christianity instead of super conservative, Reformed Presbyterian circles. And so eventually I converted and became Eastern Orthodox. And I loved it for a variety of reasons. But I could get into if you want, but it's not really critical. And
it's my own personal curiosity, yes, but I don't know if we have time for the show.
So the kids and I converted. Now, he ended up converting with us, but it was only pro forma. He was going through the motions because we were doing it with him or without him. So it was sort of a thing where if you look at, Maslow's, what you need for self-actualization, I didn't have love and intimacy with him, but I was able to self-actualize it because I found communities of people through CrossFit and through the Greek Orthodox Church and things like that, where I was able to fill in the missing chunks of me to get to where I am now, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So I did it without,
complete sense.
So I did it without him. And so then it was I ended up having a part-time career, and I was able to, I will always be really grateful to the people that helped me get where I got. And I was able to do some pretty incredible things in incredible places. From a small town messed up kid, it was pretty awesome, really, to say, wow, you can really go and do these kinds of things. So I think that helped get to the point where when it all came out, I could say, okay, we're going to be okay. We'll somehow We're going to get through this, and we're going to put one foot in front of the other. And I don't know where we're going yet, but I know where we're not going. And we're still plugging along.
And I just sent out a little bit of a humorous version of the Pyramid of Needs.
Oh, yeah. So I don't believe that. So psychological theories are just a way of explaining how things generally go. I don't think that you absolutely have to do them in a certain order, but I think there are some. I love hierarchy of needs. I like Steinberg's multiple intelligences theory, which is basically, are you familiar with that?
Not really, no.
Okay, the gist of it is there's 9 intelligences, but you could surmise it into everyone has a superpower. And he is a Harvard-educated psychologist, and he set up schools, and they teach in these 9 different modalities. And so kids are exposed to being taught in ways that they're comfortable, also in ways that challenge them. And so it's learning how to use your superpower and learning how to you have other skills become superpowers is a simple answer.
Nice. I'm going to have to check that out.
Rather than everyone has to be a square peg in the round hole in the machine. It's like the antithesis of that. It's the artistic version of these are all legitimate ways of learning and legitimate ways of thinking. And his theory is some parts of your personality are intrinsic. You're wired a certain way. But some of this is there's a lot of neuroplasticity. You have a lot more control than you think. And you get into, your hormones and stress and things that you're exposed to are going to affect your genetic expression.
Yeah. Also, the bacteria cultures in your body too. There's so many different cultures, and if they get out of whack, whoo,
absolutely,
man, it will wreck you.
But I also think that it's somewhat freeing as well, because then you're not doomed to a certain destiny. You can say you have a propensity or you have these certain, risk factors, but you're not doomed to something.
Oh yes, like I have my propensity towards alcoholism and heart disease. Doesn't mean I'm going to be an alcoholic. Doesn't mean I'm going to suffer heart disease.
No, but you know that you need to go to the gym and watch how much alcohol you drink.
Yep.
You don't have to. These things can sometimes become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh,
and I think
yes.
when you suffer from abuse or other things, when you have depression and anxiety, you know what? I have my own high-functioning anxiety. I have my own issues. Is learning how to keep them in check. Like I have the walls in my house painted charcoal colors. I've got a whole list of tricks, because that's what I have to do to be okay. But I think the 40-something-year-old self would tell teenage self is you're not doomed to this. That was one of the real things that changed in therapy from the time I was in therapy the first time. And their outlook was, well, y'all are just damaged goods. You're going to end up being teen parents and fuck-ups and drug addicts. So there's really not much point to sit here besides mentally masturbating with each other. Seriously. When I went through therapy, when I was divorcing, it was actually helpful. What people know about the mind and behavior modification and things it's changed so much. Hopefully for the better.
Yeah, cats complain because the link that I sent doesn't work. It's never worked for them. I'm wondering if that's a phone issue because it worked on the computer. Basically, the link that I sent, it was the joke, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It had the base as noms and the rest of it as lols.
You should drop it in the Discord. That way everybody can see it.
That's a good idea.
That's awesome.
I love it. I saw that. I was like,
I think that's accurate for my life.
A little oversimplified, but it hits the most important parts, the food,
yes,
and the laughs.
Well, okay, so I enjoyed psychology because psychology So I'm not going to school to be a psychologist at this point in my life. I am getting a BA degree instead of a BS. Is it helped when you go in a situation like mine? It was a way for me to understand how people think and how the mind works. And it helped tie up a bunch of loose ends for me that I wasn't going to be able to get that from my former husband. I needed to kind of find a way to make my peace with our situation and maybe how to use that to help people. Who knows? Jury's still out on that. but it was interesting. The analyst side of me loves different theories.
There, I just put it up in the Discord. Yeah, and that's one thing that I love, being able to just discuss things. It's kind of part of the reason why I have this podcast. Get to just discuss things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I'm like so hyper focused now on the fact that the Spreaker app doesn't allow links to work. I'm like, what the? I'm sorry. I when I'm tired like this, I get easily distracted and get like I hyper focus on things.
I get it.
My bad. I'm being a bad host today.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm a bad co-host. I've just been letting you talk, and I haven't been interjecting very much. But I've, just been sucked in by the story itself, and I am thrilled that your family is doing okay now, because sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
In situations like this, sometimes they never get back to being okay.
Yeah, I mean, Bexy speaks from personal experience, so your perspective is different than Bexy's, as Bexy's was a victim of the abuse.
Yes.
By her grandfather, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's nice to have you come on here and be able to give a different perspective. We've had a few people come in abused by uncle, abused by father, abused by grandfather. This is different because you're like, I was married to the abuser and I had no idea.
And it's how do you get out of it and be okay? So one of the things, if I was older and had, no obligations, and you could look at a passion project, you look at how do you empower people to be okay? What does that look like? Whether it doesn't matter if it's sexual abuse or domestic violence or drug abuse, but there is a serious disconnect between people that need help and the services they need.
Yeah, I definitely get that, because I'm gonna say this straight out. I didn't get help because I wasn't believed. And I didn't get help until I was in my late 30s. And that help didn't come from professionals. That help came from people around me who took actual time enough to actually see me for a person.
Yeah.
And say, hey, you're pretty great. Why are you so down on yourself? And the more I talked to them and the more I thought about it, the more I realized, these experiences that I had when I were younger, they have really, the trauma and the abuse, they had shaped my whole life. And basically I was a doormat.
Yeah.
And it almost killed me.
Oh, wow.
And it took
I'm
almost
glad it
killing me for me to finally wake up.
Yeah.
And then it took E holding my hand like every step of the way back from this freaking doormat experience.
Hey, I'm just glad I'm here to help you.
I'm glad you're here.
I got a non-biased sister out of it.
I know. I have the best non-bio brother in the world out of it. And
Aww. I swear you try to make me cry every episode. I swear that's what you're trying to do.
Biology does not always equate family. There are some bonds that are actually tighter than blood.
And it doesn't start there either.
Yep. Supernatural, that's where that line came from. And then the blood of the coven is thicker than the water of the womb. That's the full actual quote.
Yes, it is.
Like a lot of people here, and we've talked about it a number of times on episodes, that people go, well, blood's thicker than water. Well, the blood of the coven is thicker than the water of the womb. The family you choose it could be more family than the family you're born with.
Absolutely. Some of the people I'm absolutely closest to are not my biological family. With the exception
but nonetheless, they're family.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kids are the one area that, you're kind of close.
Yeah, the little shits are stuck with me, so.
Yeah, except that I'm at the age finally where I'm like, I look at my younger kids, and I'm like, I can't use the line I use on my older kids, which is, it's an old Bill Cosby line before, everything came out, back when he was still funny and acceptable.
Back from the before times?
Yeah, back from the before times. It was, I brought you into this world and I could take you out. Won't matter to me. I'll make another one look just like you.
Uh-huh. Yes. Well, I couldn't use that joke anymore anyway, so, yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm too old at this point.
But you know what? My youngest is almost into double digits, and
my youngest is potty training right now.
Oh.
Fun stuff. But yeah, we finally got him interested. We got him a remote control monster truck of Megalodon, which is his favorite monster truck. He can only use it when he goes on the potty. Man, has it worked.
You're incentivizing him.
Yes, man, has it worked. It's been working really well. Now he's just like, all of a sudden, from out of the blue, I gotta go potty. Say, okay, go. I'm following you. Yeah, and I just went on my phone and tested out the Spreaker app. Nope, it doesn't. The links don't work on the app. If anybody has an Android, we'd love to know if it's the same. Because we only have iOS. the listener that we're talking to has iOS. I have iOS. Bexy has iOS.
So I'm.
Yes.
Sarah has iOS. We're just a bunch of Apple snobs.
Actually.
I was, for the longest time, I had an Android phone, and I loved it. But the thing is, I don't think they make the one that I loved so much anymore. And when I accidentally, it got stepped on, I switched to Apple.
Yeah, I was, like, when the Galaxy S2 came out, I got it the day it was released in the U.S. When the Galaxy S4 came out, went ahead and upgraded to that. The Galaxy S4 pissed me off so much that I was looking at Apple going, okay, Apple, if you want to win me over, first, you need the big screens like the Galaxies. Because it's back when they still had the Apple 5s and they had the brick with the small screen. Like, I need the bigger screen. And I need certain features of the software that you just don't have. Then the iPhone 6 came out. I'm like, okay, so you got the screen now. Then iOS 7 came out. Like, okay, now you got the operating system. I'll try it out. And I've been iOS since.
Awesome.
The cat's laughing about Monster Truck Potty Time.
That's funny.
All I can think is, Monster Truck Party Time, Monster Truck Party Time.
And see, all I can think when you're talking about potty training is that scene from Look Who's Talking. No, it's Look Who's Talking 2, where they're trying to potty train the oldest child, and they're like, pee pee in the potty, pee pee in the potty, and they're dancing through the house.
The crap you do when you're a parent. You're like, yeah, I'll never do that. Then you have a kid, and next thing you know, you're doing worse.
Oh. Trust me, trying to get Adam to use the toilet more, I have employed various things, including sitting in the bathroom with him and making a game of it where he plays the push it out, way out game. I know.
That's another Bill Cosby. Push it out, shove it out, way out.
We need another comedian that can recycle some of these.
Seriously, his stuff was gold, and it was family friendly too. That was the best part.
Mm-hmm. You know, now I'm like, Adam, if you go to the bathroom in the toilet, I'll give you a cookie.
Yep.
And he'll be looking at me. 2 cookies.
Oh.
Yeah, you little shithead. 2 cookies.
If you save one, he's like, okay, just starts bearing down right there in front of you.
You laugh, but this is the child who literally was walking through my living room, stopped right in front of the TV, squatted like a sumo wrestler, raised one leg, and cracked off the loudest fart I've ever heard the other day.
Oh, God, I wish you had that on film.
If you ever does it again, I'll try to video capture that for you.
And here we are in potty humor once again.
Can't help it, I'm 2.
So am I. Yeah, we bought a box of it's like basically like party favor, like for the party favor bag that you stuff. We got a whole box of this shit. Like little cheap tops, cheap sunglasses, Chinese finger traps, stuff like that.
Like the stuff you get at the dentist when you're a little kid and you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the potty prize box.
Ah, yes.
And they have...
Now...
Oh, go for it.
Oh, I was going to say, now Adam asks if I go to the potty, can I have a bath ball in my bath? Yes, Adam. He likes bath bombs.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, sorry, potty prize box.
Yep. So,
mental note taken.
Hey, there's grandkids that you can start doing that and be like, yeah, I got your kid to go on the potty.
Nope. I've done my time.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Is like when I have my granddaughter with me, and the kids are here, and I'm like, "Oh, you stink. This is yours."
Yep.
He's like, "What? You don't know how to change a diaper anymore?" Like, "Oh, I still change a diaper because my 4-year-old
not that one."
Yeah, but I ain't changing this one.
I bet you're just waiting for the day when you can hype them up on sugar and send them home to their parents.
No, you have no idea.
Oh, yes, I do. I know your mind.
So, what'd you guys have for breakfast? We had Belgian waffles, ice cream, and whipped cream, and syrup, and... Oh. Yeah, melt
Purple made chocolate chip pancakes, and he put whipped cream on top, and we had jelly beans on the side.
And then we went out and got ice cream. Yeah, no, but one of the things that my ex-mother-in-law pulled off was to actually get my oldest to get potty trained. Something we couldn't do. We go on our honeymoon to Hawaii, and we come back and he's fucking potty trained. We're like, are you kidding me? We tried to get this little bastard potty trained for a year. He stays with you for 4 days, and he's potty trained. The fuck?
The power of a grandparent?
I get the power of bribes.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So, Sarah, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, but I'm going to have to go and tend my flock shortly.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming and sharing.
Oh, anytime.
I really, really, I mean, I enjoyed hearing your story and um, knowing I like that in the end, like I said earlier, your family is okay.
Yeah.
I'm very, very, very happy to hear that.
I mean, considering the alternative where you could be without any of your kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, especially that.
Okay, so one has gone off the reservation. Who knows
Correct.
if they'll ever come back? Could have been much worse.
Absolutely. And that particular one had underlying mental health struggles anyway. But I think, to the best of my knowledge, they're doing well.
And that's all you can really hope for. And
Absolutely.
who knows, maybe one day they'll reach out.
Who knows?
But again,
you never know.
That's on them. That's not anything you have any power to do.
Exactly. So you can say, well, I've done what I can. I did my best, and I've done what I can.
The lines of communications are open, and we'll leave it that way.
Yep.
Yeah. So again, thank you very much for coming. It was really, really enlightening. I mean, there's so much to the story. It's so complex.
Yeah.
But it's really nice to finally to get a different perspective on the story. The only perspective that's left is the abuser, and I'd rather not have them on the show.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
And, at some point, if you wanted to dive into some of the how you go and find new careers and some of that, we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, because, I mean, we also talked about before where, like, we touched on it lightly, like, the services that were available to you, they're like, well, we're going to go ahead and make you dependent on the state in order to help you.
So that's a great thing that I would love to talk about on another episode.
Yeah, I would love to really, because I mean, because it's like there's that, but then there's like the EDD, which they actually do resume workshops for free. They have Cal Jobs, like a website specifically for job hunting through the state. So it's like, where the services that we're trying to help you were kind of cripple, where there's other services out there. They're like, oh, you want to keep your house? Yeah, let's help you keep your house. Oh, you want to get a job with... You want to figure out what you're good at? Let's figure out what you're good at and build a resume around it. Like, they're out there, but they don't communicate.
Well, and it was COVID. I think there was an element of COVID with the Wild West show, but I think there is definitely a disconnect. And that's one thing, maybe someday we can, talk about and do some work to try to help people in those situations.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I do want to put up eventually on the website is a resources page. Just that they come so few and far in between, and I have to go track them all down again to build it up. But I definitely would like to get that set up so that way, like, we have, like, Weave. We had a guest that didn't even know that Weave existed. It's, the women escaping a violent environment. That's what it stands for, Weave. And there's others like it, where it's all about getting the resources and help that you need for different situations. It's out there. And, yeah, we would like to be able to kind of put some of that together. No, I don't plan on being, like, the end-all, be-all resource, but, hey, you know what? If it's mentioned and we could put it up there, make it a place where people can just go and look, be like, I remember there's an episode about that. Let's go look on their resource page. Boom, there it is.
Well, yeah, and I've got a whole bunch of them through the school and some of that as well.
Yeah, that's a major undertaking.
Yes.
Even though it's like I have tools that make making a web page easy, that's still a lot of data entry. That's still a lot of work. A lot of making sure the links are good. Yeah, and Kat said, thank you. Sorry I was late. Sounds like you've gotten some resolution and peace.
Yeah. Yes, we're...
I was just going to say, Bexy threw up rain.org. Absolutely love Rain. RAINN.
Yes. I just thought it's the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization, and they have resources for all kinds of things. So,
and
I just thought it was a good thing to throw out there.
And they are hugely against the term rape culture, because they're like, then you're taking the onus away from the perpetrator, and you're making it a culture. There's like, oh well, I couldn't help it; it's part of my culture. No, there is no rape culture. Right. You're a rapist.
Exactly.
Own it.
All right, so I gotta go, but it was great chatting with you guys.
It was lovely to chat with you too. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a great night.
All right, have a good one.
Bye.
All right, so yeah, everybody else, next week it is Veterans Day, and we have a special guest specifically for Veterans Day with the 22 for 22 challenge and PTSD for soldiers. Yeah, it's going to be probably a brutal episode. Definitely probably worth checking out.
Definitely. I'm absolutely thrilled that they agreed to come on the show and spread more awareness about this. I know a lot of people are either people who are either veterans themselves or family of veterans. I'm hoping that we get all kinds of good information and resources to help others out of this next episode.
I agree. Until then, I'm E.
I'm Bexy.
And on behalf of C, we'll all catch you next week.
Bye, y'all.